Thanks for coming. Today we're here with Dave Kawula. Dave is a MVP in Cloud and Data Center Management, Principal Consultant at Tricon Elite Consulting, based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We blog on checkyourlogs.net. And Dave has arguably the most extensive Storage Spaces Direct blog post out there that I've seen. He's been blogging on Storage Spaces Direct and Hyper Converged infrastructure for the better part of the past 5 years, and a lot of it has been in implementations of all different sizes, from 40 node clusters down to 2 boxes. So everything that we've ever run into is blogged up on that site, and today we're going to go through some notes that Dave has come across implementing Storage Spaces Direct to our customers.
Awesome, thank you very much, Emil. This is actually, he forgot to introduce himself. This is Emil Cabot. He works with me at Tricon. Just for food for thought for you guys, I know you like to come to these sessions. These are real quick hitters, 20 minutes. We try to jam as much cool information as we can into these presentations. On my blog, there's probably about 50 to 60 posts up there directly on Storage Spaces Direct right now. And we have tons of goodies for you. We have lots of goodies like t-shirts. Can come by the, yes, thank you. Can come by the data on booth afterwards and get more shirts if there's not enough for everybody. All right, so let's take a look at what I want to go through with you. This is a session that I did last year at Microsoft Ignite. It was very, very well received, and I've added to it. So I've added some more notes from the field from what we've seen this year, from 2016. We've done a ton of deployments for this year, actually 2018. And we'll go through a quick overview on what is Storage Spaces Direct. And I just have to get you to put your hands up real quick, because this is new, and all the audiences that I present to, how many of you have heard of Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct before? Okay, it's probably about half in the room. So those of you that have heard about Storage Spaces Direct, give me about the first 4 minutes of the presentation just to level set with everybody else, just as to what Microsoft's version of hyperconvergence is, and then we're going to get into the good stuff, the stuff that you've come here. This is the stuff that you've paid for, your ticket to Microsoft Ignite. We have some special gifts for you, not only the t-shirts, we've got some other special gifts for you, and then we're going to talk about some cool scripts, third-party add-ons, and then we'll also talk about some of the new things that are coming with Storage Spaces Direct that are getting announced this week or already have been announced. So let's get going. You guys ready to get started? Yes, everybody's excited. It's a Tuesday afternoon, right? The good news is my session's chock full of really good gold nuggets for you. So, all right, so let's get started. We'll start off initially with defining what is hyperconvergence. And what does this mean for you? A traditional SAN has 3 layers for you. It's going to have networking, compute, and storage. With hyperconvergence, you're just going to stack 2 of those layers together. You're going to take your storage and your compute, and you're going to run it inside of the same chassis. In my session, servers fall from the sky the same way that they fall into your racks in your data centers. Now, what you have to think and envision in your head right now is, what type of servers are you using? Are you a Lenovo shop? Are you a Dell shop? Are you an HP shop? A Data On shop? It doesn't matter. These are just regular Intel-based servers with direct attached disks. Okay? And so in this example, we'll say that each of these servers has 4 drives independently. What we're going to do is we're going to cluster them together. We're going to use Microsoft Failover Cluster Manager. That's going to be the engine that you're going to use. Show of hands. How many of you are Hyper-V guys in here? Perfect. How many of you have used Failover Cluster Manager before? Perfect. It's the same set of tooling that we're going to use for Storage Spaces Direct. We're going to take those independent direct attached disks, we're going to form them into what's called a storage pool. So that part of Failover Cluster Manager that you never used before now lights up for you when we enable Storage Spaces Direct. If all of your hardware is set up and everything is working properly, how many lines of PowerShell does it take to turn on Storage Spaces Direct? 1. It takes 1. Enable cluster S2D, boom, everything's going to take and pop in there for you. All right, very easy to set up. We carve out the pool into what are called volumes. Those volumes are presented back to the operating system as cluster shared volumes. So those of you that have built Hyper-V clusters before, you've used cluster shared volumes. It is the same mechanisms for you, all right? So we build some volumes. Then what we can do is we can actually deal with some resiliency. So let's just say, for argument's sake, in this hypothetical storage spaces direct cluster that I'd be building, that it was set up in what's called a three-way mirroring configuration. Uh-oh, had a failure. You dropped a drive, or you dropped a couple drives. In a three-way mirroring configuration, you have 3 copies of your data. 3 copies of your data means that's going to stay online. Well, technically it wouldn't stay online because you wouldn't have pool quorum. Those of you that know storage spaces direct, we'd actually need 4 nodes, but it wouldn't fit very nicely into my slide. All right? So, you can lose a whole node, you can lose drives, it's very resilient. But what's it built on? It's built on the traditional servers, the regular run-of-the-mill servers that you're used to using. Your Dell R740XDs, your HP DL380s, right? These are just normal servers that this is built on. Back-end networking running in behind. Then we can take and present our virtual machines on top, and that's the gist of what hyperconvergence is. We just stack those layers together. Does it make your infrastructure more affordable? Yes, it absolutely does. Now, is there a trade-off? Is it as easy to patch? Is it easy to patch all those workloads? There's a trade-off. You get a more cost-effective solution, but now you have a little bit more work on the management side when it comes to patching, but that's fine. You just have to understand those pieces. Now, one of the traditional problems that we've run into in the past with building solutions like this is the DIY builds and certifying the individual solutions. So what Microsoft has done is they've come up with what's called the Windows Server Software-Defined Program, and the vendors can actually submit their hardware to Microsoft and get a fully certified solution. So when you go to order this solution from them, you're getting a tested bill of materials, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Does this mean that you can't build on your own? No, you can still build on your own, just make sure that all your hardware is on the HCL. Now, I know you're asking a question right now. Windows Server 2019 is launching this week. You know, it's going to be out in GA, it's probably October timeframe, somewhere in there. But the feeling is, with our storage spaces direct experts in the industry, is that if you're matching the Windows Server software-defined program, or if your hardware is on the hardware compatibility list and supports Windows Server 2016, there's a very good chance that that'll support Windows Server 2019. You have to give those vendors time, though, to build and certify those solutions. So I would say you're probably going to be looking at about the January timeframe before you see any of the vendors coming out with Windows Server 2019 versions of those WSSD platforms. Now, one of the big things that I've seen from the field is the transparency of certain vendors with being very forthcoming on publishing their architecture and documentation on how to build and stand this up. One of my favorite vendors that I have that's done an incredibly good job with this is Dell. Dell has documented the complete reference architecture builds on their R730s and 740 platforms for Windows Server 2016. They're going to update this for 2019. It has everything that you need to get your project started. When you kick off a project, guys, what are some of the things that you need? You need a reference architecture, you need build guides, you need Visio diagrams, you need server matrices, you need firmware matrices, you need a bill of materials, you need switch configurations, you need all of that to get your project going. They give it to you for free. It's downloadable right off of the website. It is a great starter kit for Storage Spaces Direct. Even if you're an HP shop, guess what? They all have certain versions of this. Lenovo has one. HP has one. Mellanox even has one. Okay, so these are available and they're there for you free of charge. They've done a very good job with that. Speaking of Mellanox, one of the challenges with this is setting up a proper network infrastructure. So when you're building something in the data center, finding server configs or PowerShell configs for how to build things, it's not really all that hard for us to find that. We can typically figure that out as Windows admins, but one of the things that's a little more difficult to find is certified switch configurations. I want to plug these servers in that example that we had earlier, those 3 servers that were up there. What ports do I plug everything into? How do I provision those? How do I provision and profile those ports? I'm a Windows guy, I'm not a network guy. Can I hand this over to my network guy? Can we work together? Can we figure this out? This Mellanox document here, this Mellanox document is a Windows Storage Spaces Direct Build Guide, comes with the top of rack switch configurations from that vendor. That's great. I can use that as an example to get started. I have tons of links in here, so if I click through too fast, they're all inside of the downloadable PowerPoint decks for everybody. So if you do miss I see some people taking pictures, don't worry about it. All right, the next thing is getting started with your project. The good news is, I happen to know somebody that wrote a book called Master Storage Spaces Direct. Even better news for you, if you want this in print, you can get it from the link on Amazon or just search for it on Amazon. You can get a print copy or Kindle, or if you want it for free, I'll show you how you can actually get that book in PDF format. It's a great getting started guide for you. It'll show how to build a 2-node configuration, everything required. It is a little dated. It's January of 2017, but it'll get you started. All right, I'm working on the 2019 version. Unfortunately, I have 7 kids and a life, so I can only push out books as fast as I can. I only built 12 books last year, and it's challenging. And this one's in the queue to update. Now, how many of you like to build this in a lab environment or like to test this out in a lab environment? You guys like testing things out in a lab environment? 3 options for you. Number 1, in all of my books that I have, I use what's called a big demo script. PowerShell script that'll take and build out a lab environment for you. That's cool. That's just the way I do it. But wouldn't you like to have the scripts that Microsoft Premier Consulting uses? You guys want to, like you go to get a Storage Spaces Direct Premier workshop. That's all published right here on the GitHub Windows 2016 Labs, chock full of every possible scenario that you can think of. It takes about 1 hour to build out that lab, and it's all built with PowerShell DSC, and then you just add the scenarios in. Want to try storage replica, want to try BitLocker, want to try every scenario that's possibly out there. This is the same stuff that MCS and Premier uses, and that is updated very, very frequently. The third link is actually an ARM template. If you want to take and you want to build out storage spaces direct in Azure on live VMs, there's some examples there for you as well. Now, when you're building storage spaces direct, some of the secret sauce behind this is RDMA. And you have 2 choices when you're building out your storage spaces direct farms. I guess 3 choices. 1, don't use RDMA or remote direct memory access. Does it work? Sure it works. Here's the problem though. You take a huge penalty on your host CPUs when the storage jobs are running and things are replicating. So yes, it will work. It's okay if you're building it in a test lab, but we would never do that in production. So the other 2 choices you have when you're building out an RDMA solution is something called RoCE, or RDMA over Converged Ethernet. It requires you to configure data center bridging on the hosts, and it requires you to configure those DCBX or data center bridging settings on the actual switches themselves. There's 2 specific settings, which are PFC and ETS, that are required on those switches. Now, if you don't want to do all that configuration, there's another technology that works with storage spaces direct called iWarp, and that's a universal configuration. So you basically just plug and play, it'll work in any switch. You don't need special switches. You basically just use those cards. I just worked with a customer that had 100 gig iWarp cards. They just had run-of-the-mill layer 2 switch configurations. They didn't have to do anything special except for configure the VLANs. So that was kind of cool. So that's one of the ones that Microsoft pushes a little bit more because you don't have to worry about the switch side so much. So what does RDMA look like if you don't know it? This is what it looks like. I'm copying a file right now. This was just in my test lab. That's why the speeds aren't great in there. And so I'm copying a file into a cluster shared volume, and take a look at the network traffic. I'm running about 16 kilobytes on my storage network in this particular example, but I'm pushing about 150 to 180 megabytes a second. RDMA offloads all of that traffic from the host. So it's like taking and reassembling DNA on the far side. So your host doesn't have to take the hit. Think of those RDMA network adapters as having GPUs on them. They're doing all that processing work for you, taking the work off the host processor. You want to set this up and get this working properly. All right, who's ready for the good stuff now? Are you guys ready for the good stuff now? Because we have about 7 minutes left. I always go long, it's fine. So here you go. Gift number 1 for you. All of my books in my library are now available for free, including that Storage Spaces Direct one that I mentioned earlier. Just go to leanpub.com, search my name, the entire library is there. I've been hammered on Twitter for this week already. There is a price on there. Slide it all the way to the left. It's like magic. It says free, and you'll have a downloadable copy of the PDF for you right there. There's no credit card needed, nothing like that. It's a forever free model, so as I update the books, you'll get notified inside of there. And as any of the new books that we publish, they're always going to have a free component. That's our gift to you guys in the community. And there's more books in there than just Storage Spaces Direct. Is that a cool one? Do you guys like that one? Okay. Next one, some real notes from the field here. If you're using RDMA or Rocky in the data center, great. If not, don't enable it. If you're testing this, don't turn it on. Don't turn on those data center bridging quality of service policies that are required. Break stuff when you do your builds, all right? So don't do it. If you're not going to do RDMA, don't put in the RDMA configs, because you'll download scripts from guys like me off of the internet. They're going to have all the RDMA configs. Unless you're going to set it up, then take and fully configure everything. If not, skip those sections, all right? Okay, next one. This is a big one. Stick with the supported and tested firmware drivers. Thou shalt not go download the latest firmware that the vendor puts out for the NIC as soon as it comes out. If you want to be patient zero and test this stuff out for the rest of us in the community, we're more than happy to take your feedback. But make sure that you're running that through a dev test environment, because that firmware might break RDMA. That firmware might break storage jobs. Something might happen. That's why I love that Dell reference architecture, because that is the tested and supported firmware for all components in the build. The second thing is, along this line, it's not stated up there, patching. Patching has not been my friend with Storage Spaces Direct, especially the August and September cumulative rollups. The August and September cumulative rollups actually change the processor types. So what that means is, as you're draining roles and you're walking through your cluster, what's going to end up happening is you can't live migrate back. You're going to have to take an outage to move those back, and eventually you're going to run out of resources. Second bad thing about patching is you can't uninstall cumulative updates. So once you start rolling forward, you're stuck. The only solution is to reinstall the OS. So if there's something wrong with those CUs, you're going to be in trouble. All of the hot fixes and support packages from Microsoft and Storage Spaces Direct specifically do come in those cumulative updates, but do install with caution. Make sure that you're checking with others that have actually deployed. And I have a gift for you at the end of the session for how you can connect with 380 other like-minded Storage Spaces Direct professionals in the world. We have our own community, so you'll be able to check with us, all right? That's a big one. Next one. Has anybody had situations where storage jobs have failed? Show of hands. Who's had failed storage jobs? Here's a little trick for you. If those storage jobs failed, to kick them off, sometimes all that it takes is changing the CSV node ownership around. Just move the CSV node ownership around. That's sometimes been enough to just bump those storage jobs to get them started. It doesn't always work, but it's the first thing that we go through and we try with troubleshooting, because it doesn't require any outages. All right? The next thing is documenting your install. Who doesn't love post-configuration documentation? You don't love it, or you do love it? You don't like documenting it, right? Here's a script for you that fellow MVP, Romain Seri, has written for us. The link to his GitHub is up there. All that you do is download this and run it, and it builds the most beautiful post-configuration script or report, HTML report, that you could ever want. I use this as a starting point with every single consulting engagement that I go into, because now I know what I'm getting started with. I can see if your RDMA is configured properly. I can see if you've turned on jumbo frames. I can see if you've enabled the CSV cache. I can see all of those settings in a report that takes all of less than a minute to run on your farm, completely free of charge. I can take absolutely no credit for that, but I use this religiously in all of my deployments. It's incredible, all right? The next one. How many of you are running hybrid solutions or are looking at building hybrid storage spaces, direct arrays? Can't all afford all flash. So some of us might want to front end that with some SSD drives or some NVMe drives in front of just spinning hard drives. If you do that, depending on the size of those cache drives, you are going to take and have a penalty on that. And the penalty comes against your Hyper-V host. Every 1 terabyte of cache consumes 4 gigabytes of RAM on the host. It shows in there as a system process that's taking it. So in this example, I had a customer that had 4 terabytes of cache drives. They had 4T SSD drives that were front-ending all of their spinning drives. We were burning, by the time the system was online, over 20 gigs on the Hyper-V hosts just to get started. It was always being burned. Okay. So just remember that there is a cost to this. There's no cost if you're doing all flash. This is only if you're configuring in a hybrid config. All right? So those caching drives have a little bit of a penalty for us. Not so big of a deal because most of us build fairly large servers now. So most servers would be built 256. I have a customer I'm working with now that has 768 gigs of RAM per host. All right? Okay, next one. Is this good stuff? You guys like this? Okay, good. It's recorded too. So if you happen to miss anything or I'm talking too fast, there you go. I'm at my time, so now I'm actually into the overtime section. I only have a few more to go through. Next one, tweak VM Fleet. How many of you have heard or used VM Fleet before? Show of hands, not very many. Write this down. You like to test your builds, performance, and stress test those before they go into production. In the storage spaces direct world, we use VM Fleet. It is a free testing tool, set of tools that come from Microsoft, free download. Now, when you initially run this, it has a PowerShell script so we can see what's going on. It's called watch-cluster, and it gives us a cool little report to see our I/O and our throughput. If you simply just change the command to watch-cluster-sets with an asterisk in there to pick all of the sets, this is the expansive report that you get just by changing that. That's pretty cool. Watch-cluster-sets with the wildcard in there, right? Asterisk. Okay. Sorry if I'm moving, I got finished up. They're trying to pull me off. Okay. Now, if you do use VM Fleet for testing, you always want to remember that there's an internal network adapter that's created with VM Fleet. You need to get rid of that. And you also need to make sure that you're checking the CSV balancer in your failover Hyper-V cluster to make sure that that's checkboxes aren't unchecked. Certain iterations of that, it messed around with a few of those different settings. All right. Next. Build out your network with System Center and VMM. You're thinking, what are you talking about, Dave? System Center and VMM? Yes, I love it. The network provisioning to spin up a lot of different nodes is great. The problem is getting that all set up is a real pain. There's about 1 million clicks to get that set up properly for you. The good news is I've actually documented that in my Deploying SCVMM Volume 2 book, which is free, guess where? On my LeanPub library. So everything is documented the same way that I would build that out, and it works really well. So step by step, you have it. All right? I've got 2 more, and then we'll wrap this up. The next one is Microsoft has published a diagnostic tools library. So when things go wrong, what do? You call 1-800 Microsoft support, and what is the very first thing they're going to get you to do? They're going to get you to run the diagnostic sets. The diagnostic sets are available for you in that GitHub repo. You can run them at any point in time on your own without issues. That's a very important one, because even just running it to see what happens, to see what they're gathering, you'll actually figure out some pretty useful information from Storage Spaces Direct. One of the last ones here for you, I got 2 left. Now, the last one, remember I said there was a community of 380 like-minded Storage Spaces Direct enthusiasts? We've set up our own Slack channel. Yes, that's right. Take a picture of this, please. Join us on Slack. We are all your friends. Your questions will get answered at the speed of light in there. I post in there, and I swear that people are responding within like 10 seconds to stuff I'm posting. Bad patches, bad firmware, blue screens, whatever it happens to be. You just want to chat with some friends and hang out during the day. We're all Storage Spaces Direct friends there. This was probably one of the best ideas that I've seen in a long time. Once again, I can't take credit for this. We've had a few other MVPs that started this, and this thing has taken off, absolutely taken off. That is where you're going to come to talk to your friends about your builds. All right, second last one. If you haven't tried Windows Admin Center, you want to get this. This is your HTML5 views. It has a software-defined area in there specific to Storage Spaces Direct, and we've got views in here to manage everything. Beautiful. What's the cost of that again? Free, no cost. You'll actually learn this from my sessions. I just like to either give away my stuff or other people's stuff for free in my sessions, but this is all stuff that I use. All right, the last one is I've done some testing on ReFS and dedupe. Do you guys want to see what some of the initial results look like? All right, so in Storage Spaces Direct, the last volume that I was playing around with here, I've been seeing anywhere between a 55 to about a 70% compression ratio with dedupe. Those are real numbers that I'm seeing. And I've got a variety of different use cases for this. That was in Storage Spaces Direct. This was actually just in a standalone Spaces volume, so it works in Spaces as well in 2019, and it also works on 2019 standalone VMs inside of Azure or just 2019 VMs. And with that, that is my notes from the field, folks. I have some t-shirts to give away, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this as fair as I possibly can. I'm going to actually pull out my t-shirt gun, which is my arm, and I will throw t-shirts in, and you can fight over the t-shirts at the end of the session. Most importantly, one more thing, evaluations. Please do fill out the evaluations. This is how we make these things better on a yearly basis. I did notice in my app, if I didn't get scanned at the session, especially the theater session, your eval might not show up in there properly. So you might just have to go click on the session, say, yes, I did attend at the bottom when you scroll down, and that's where you'll find the evaluation for this. Guys, thank you very much, and hopefully we can do this again next year. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so since we didn't really have enough time for questions during the session, Dave will be at stage right?
Ready?
After the session, and if you've got any questions, please come by and see him there.
Oh, I better get a stronger arm here. There's people way in the back. Okay, Emil. Oh, we have lots of t-shirts to give away here, so. Okay, ready? You take that pile. There you go. Oops, dropped one. All right. I feel like the guy at the Veeam booth that just gives stuff away. Here you guys go. Come up closer. We got one way in the back. Let's see if I can get it all the way. Oh, just missed. This is a fun game.